The question may be raised why, if Haridasa Thakur did not take the insults of Gopala Chakravarti seriously, the proud Brahmana had to suffer such a severe reaction. From the incident of Durvasa Muni and Maharaja Ambarisha, we can understand that unless an offender approaches the offended offended Vaishnava and begs his forgiveness, the Lord cannot execute the offender. This principle were also affirmed in the incident involving Srivasa Thakur and Chapala. Gopala Chapalam continued to suffer for a long time until he approached Srinivasa Thakur on the urging of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and begged to be forgiven for his offences. Sri Srivasa Thakur unreservedly forgave Gopala Chapala, and thus he was forgiven due to his sincere repentance and readiness to surrender services to Srinivasa Thakur by taking fully to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we can understand that it is not enough that the Vaishnava is not personally aggravated by an offender. The Lord's anger will not be dissipated unless the offender personally approaches that Vaishnava and humbly submits himself and begs for forgiveness and is prepared to rectify his behavior by serving and satisfying the offended devotee. When the pure when the pure-hearted Vaishnava grants his forgiveness wholeheartedly, then the Lord is then satisfied and not otherwise. The additional element to be considered in this discussion is the element of atonement or rectification. Despite the forgiveness of an advanced devotee being granted, may still remain an obstacle. There are two items: kshama, forgiveness, and anugraha, favor. An offended devotee may grant kshama quite easily, but that is only part of the rectification. To clarify this point by an example, suppose a devotee is accused of uh, thievery. The status of being a thief is then broadcast widely in the Vaishnava community. Later, it turns out that the accused devotee is completely innocent of the charge. The culprit who falsely named the accused a thief should then approach the offended Vaishnava and apologize. The offended Vaishnava may readily agree to forgive the offender. However, such an apology is insufficient. The accused devotee reputation has been spoiled. The accuser, in order to gain the favor of the offended Vaishnava, needs to rectify the situation. Therefore, the offender should publish or broadcast the innocence of the accused devotee at least as widely and vigorously as he originally broadcast the so-called guilt of the devotee, and inquire also how he may further serve and satisfy the wronged Vaishnava. When the offended devotee becomes fully satisfied, he grants his full-hearted forgiveness, favor, and actually prays to Krishna for the deliverance of the offender. Such a bestowal of mercy is called anugraha and is essential for the and is where is this? And is essential for the complete removal of aparadha. Meditating on and trying to be the servant of Vaishnavas is an additional and important remedy in curing an offensive mentality because a servant will show respect to all and humbly serve the Vaishnavas. He will not think he is very important. He thinks he simply thinks how he can be a better servant of the devotees. This mentality will remove the tendency to commit offenses as well as help to migrate those offenses inwardly or unconsciously committed. So, next one. Santipura, association with Advaita Acharya. Haridasa was aggravated to hear of Gopala's condition and was quite prepared to forgive him. but offenses to Vaishnavas not rectified by the offender are intolerable to Krishna. During the association of Advaita Acharya, the Thakur proceeded to uh, Santipura, where he greeted the Acharya by falling at his feet. Advaita Acharya roared when he saw Haridasa and embraced him and offered him all the respect in return. Advaita Acharya had a cave-like dwelling constructed for the Haridasa Thakur on the bank of the river Ganges, where they used to regularly meet and discuss the topics of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The Thakur accepted the food every day at the home of the Acharya, and they consciously uh, relished spiritual topics. Haridasa became concerned that the Advaita Acharya was showing him so much affection and attention. Advaita Acharya belonged to the aristocratic Brahmana community of Santipura, and Haridasa was anxious about the social ramifications of his association with Advaita Acharya might produce. Although both of these transcendental Vaishnavas were very well aware that the social convention is an unimportant consideration when it comes to transcendental hierarchy. Still, Haridasa Thakur was always careful to observe social etiquette to preserve the peace and tranquility of society. He was fearful that Advaita Acharya would be subjected to criticism on his account. Many of the Brahmanas were very Prabhu, yeah, yeah, were very critical that a person born as a Muslim was being treated as a transcendental Vaishnava. Advaita Acharya, however, was unconcerned and strongly affirmed that by offering respect to Haridasa Thakur, he was behaving strictly according to the scriptural principles and concluded by stating, feeding you is equal to feeding 10 million Brahmanas. Therefore, accept this Shraddha Patra. Shraddha is a prasada offered to the forefathers at a certain date of the year or month. The Patra, the plate of the a plate offered to the forefathers, is supposed to be offered to the most qualified Brahmana in the society. Advaita Acharya showed by the act that a transcendental Vaishnava, regardless of his birth, is greater than Brahmana. This was significant incident and one of the caused consternation in certain quarters of Santipura. However, there are many supporting scriptural statements which affirm that the birth is not the determining factor in ascertaining spiritual importance. And Srila Prabhupada comments, Advaita Acharya had confidence in the sastric evidence and did not care about social customs. Advaita Acharya was highly respected in Santapura, both as a Brahmana and as a highly learned professor of the scriptures. Nevertheless, he was subjected to a good deal of censure and criticism for his honoring of Haridasa Thakur and for his association with Vaishnava. Where did it go, Prabhu? Yeah, sorry. For his association with Vaishnavas of Navadipa. He never cared for any of it. He was happy to act strictly on the basis of scriptural principles. The Krishna consciousness movement, therefore, is a cultural movement that doesn't care about the local social conventions. Following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya, we can accept a devotee from any part of the world and recognize him as Brahmana as soon as he is qualified to do the following principles of Vaishnava behavior. I stop here and I would like to conclude. From what we have learned, what we discussed in the last few paragraphs is we're talking about the things we've been talking about Vaishnava aparadas all the time. When we talk about the example of um, um, what is this Muni, Durvasa Mahamuni getting mad at Ambarisha. When the Vaishnava Aparada is done, when even the Supreme Lord, even when the Vishnu Chakra when God got mad and he released the Vishnu chakra, it is behind the Muni, in giving that example. Even the Lord cannot stop that one. When a Vaishnava aparadha is done, the Lord is so angry, um, and uh, until the offender goes and uh, begs for his forgiveness, and satisfy the offendee, unless it happens, um, the it will not be, the problem will not be resolved, because even the God cannot stop once the aparadha is done. So it has to be, if anybody does the Vaishnava aparadha, we have to go personally. Once we recognize the immediately, we have to ask for forgiveness, and also example was given, like, in this case where he has to some if somebody was got impacted, he has to take time to make sure, advertise, or whatever he do, he has to say publicly, announce that it is not their fault, and he has to apologize in public. That's something I got out of it, and just a gesture. And there's a couple of other things we also discuss. There are two items, like, that come out of this one, which is kshama, forgiveness, and anugraha. Oh, that makes more sense, because the first one is asking for forgiveness, which is kshama. When he does that, then he gets the anugraha, favor, from Supreme Lord. There also, we talked about, like, an example of um, the Advaita Acharyas association, um, here with Haridasa. It's not like, even though Haridasa is from not from a Brahmana background, whereas Advaita Acharya is a Brahmana. That's the birth is not important. It's not important. You know, it is the there's a saying here that, like, if Advaita Acharya is saying feeding you is like feeding thousands of brahmanas, because he's a pure Vaishnava. And here also we talked about what um, Srila Prabhupada is saying. The Krishna conscious movement here is a cultural movement and doesn't care about social conventions. Following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya, we can accept a devotee from any part of the world and recognize him as a Brahmana as soon as he is qualified to do the principles of Vaishnava behavior. With that, I just conclude.